Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the series concerning sustainability and CSR, and today we are going to see the case Iberdrola. It's a Spanish utility, how they managed to embed sustainability into the DNA of the business model. Okay, so let's go on. But before going on, I'm just going to say that it's based on a case that I did with two colleagues of mine, Poisson and Fontrodona, and basically it was done meanwhile I was at ISC Business School, and it was a case that was awarded by the European Association Business and Society and by other two prestigious business schools that are London Business School and INSEAD Business School. Okay, so this was done in close collaboration with Iberdrola, and the following slide mentions some of the topics that that are part of Iberdrola past presentation on their website. And it was done in accordance with the management of Iberdrola. Okay, so first what we're going to do is we're going to start analyzing the sectors, dynamics in which it has happened in the mid-2000s, how they were able to do it, how they grow, first nationally and then international, and how we can evoke the different concepts we saw through this series. Okay, let's go on. So basically it's a company that had a production mix that was not completely pure, because okay, it was true that they had renewable energies, they had some renewable energies as well, but quite slow, but they had coals and nuclear plants and so on. So what is interesting? Well, we're going to see it when we come to the drivers of the development of renewable energies in Spain. So when we're talking about utilities, what you need to take into consideration is that you've got three major variables. Economic efficiency, so trying to make it at the affordable, at the more affordable cost. So a topic concerning energy security. Well, it's fundamental to be sure that you have access to energy to avoid, for instance, what happened to Ukraine more recently. It's fundamental to have, let's say, some competitiveness, and it will be provided if it will be given if your providers are able to deliver to you. And last but not least, you've got all the elements that are linked with the environmental issues, which means that due to the climate change, Kyoto Agreement, and so on, due to the utility sector, as a difference of the transportation sector, was forced to lower its level of pollution. And in that sense, it means that some new mix of production had to be forecast. What was feasible to proceed? Well, first, it's quite important when we go on resultant target, you can have an idea about it, that total emission was supposed to be lowered by 5.2%. But what truly helps the development of renewable energies, at least in Europe, was the fact that there was first EU renewable directive, and that was signed in April 2006, and to say we, as a European Union, we need to have at least 12% of our consumption of primary energy from renewable sources in 2010. So what happened is they gave some subvention, and it was done in a way that it was possible to get a competitive advantage. Because as you may guess, if you want to say, hey, where are the best place to have to put some wind farms? Well, logically, you need to have some wind. So if you go first, you got the first mover advantage. This is something that they saw at European level, and when you see that in the US they are more polluting, in China they are polluting a lot, because there's only one way of development. It goes through industrialization. When we're talking about industrialization, it means building, well, it's making buildings. It's about doing, it's about generating new infrastructure, and this new infrastructure is fully polluting. And this is the reason why Europe could have proposed an alternative growth way, and if it had been successful, it would have been fantastic. At this point, it's not yet successful, and in terms of growth, as you know, we have entered into a dynamic that is not so great. Nevertheless, in the future, 10-15 years, it should provide lots of benefits for Europe. Okay, so in that sense, one of the countries that moved fast forward, and to see the country that moved faster in this direction, was Spain. They had an act. They say, let's try to go for it. Let's try to understand what are the regulation issues to make it. And it's really important to see that this was feasible to go. Because when we're talking about utilities, it's really important that you cannot launch your product whenever you want. You need to have the approval of the regulator. In Spain is a Comisión Nacional de Energía, the Energy National Commission. And otherwise, you can't do it. It's just like the banking sector. And when we're talking, it's almost more important to the banking sector, because imagine if you had some operator that has control of a nuclear central, you need to be sure that everything's going to work properly. Otherwise, you may have Chernobyl, you may have Fukushima. Well, all this kind of stuff that are not so funny. So this is something that it's quite important. In this framework, when we contrast Iberdrola with other national players in Spain, I'm referring to Endesa and Unión Fenosa at this time. Basically, what happened? The other two companies had much more coal, so they could not pretend to go towards renewable energies, because in terms they couldn't close the plant. And because they couldn't close the plant, they were it. I mean, they couldn't focus on the third variable. Necessarily, they will have to focus here, and they will have to say, hey, we don't want to be a polluter, but we try to be as efficient as we can. Okay, so we're going to see that Iberdrola saw the opportunity. They say, when we're talking about the utility sector, you need to understand that. Keep it in mind that the tenure of a CEO is around, it used to be around 6, now it's much more around 5 years, and even in some cases it's 4 years now. Basically, when you stop, it can be for 2 reasons. One is you retire, and the second one is, well, and this is most of the case, the situation, basically shareholders are no more happy with what you did. So it means that the new CEO will arrive, and the problem when we're talking about this type of energies, coal energy, nuclear energy, hydroelectric energy, we are talking about some facilities that require more than 10 and almost 15 years to reach the break-even. So if you are the new CEO and you want to implement new reforms, well, basically, the impact of your reform, you won't have time to see it. You won't have time. Therefore, the most important issue for a CEO at this point is to look for and find some cash. In that sense, if you consider that you've got lots of grants that can enable you, as it is the case, for renewable energy to lower the break-even from 10 to 4 years, this is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so you can see that on one end you've got the compromise of the company to move forward, to try something out, and on the other end it's pretty opportunistic to move in this. Okay, so in this case you can see that Iberdrola was the first one to move into renewable energies. It has a dual plan, combined cycle and renewable. First, they wanted to operate in Spain and then into Latin America. Why? Because you still have lots of hydroelectricity that have not been used in Latin America. Therefore, no need to go there. What is important is just to go. What is important is just to go where you got subvention. Without subvention, no interest. At this point, there's no subvention in America. No need to, or even impossible to have a return investment in less than 10 years. This is a problem. Okay, so when we look at it, we can see that Iberdrola is a leader in this sense in Spain, and here you would something that is even more interesting, worldwide leaders, because as you can see, national growth And to a certain extent, you'll see that difficult. It sounds difficult to move away from it. It sounds difficult to expand in Spain because basically all the best locations have been taken, and therefore you can see that international development. International development. Isn't it interesting to look at this? So this is the reason why you can see that moving away from Spain, but having the recognition of being a top player. What does it mean when we're talking about it? It means that you got the recognition of the most relevant stakeholder. If in the previous framework, basically the utilities had to pay lots of attention to what the state was saying and the National Commission, right now it has changed. If you want to say that you're good at renewable energy, who should you pay attention to? Well, you need to get the approval of the NGOs. And WWF has most recognized ranking in terms of renewable energy. And in that sense, what you can see is if you're number one in this ranking, it's going to work perfectly. And they manage to do it. They're recognized. So they say, hey, look, we know how to deal with the state. We know how to deal with the subvention. We know how to go and to identify the places. You can come to Spain, visit the sites. And last but not least, we've got the recognition of NGOs. So for international countries, hey, let's work with Iberdrola. Obviously, not in the major utilities country, because what's going to happen, they say, no, we don't want you to take out the business. And this is the reason why it's difficult to enter some countries such as Germany, France, or Italy. But otherwise, it's pretty interesting. And here, what happened? So when you look at it, you can see that pretty present in Poland, in Greece, in France. But it's because EDF was not such so eager to move in it initially speaking. UK, because they're not so great in this, and Germany at a high position, you can see it's really low, and Italy as well. But at the moment, we will say, hey, how did they start? What happened? Well, it's the point. It's pretty simple. It has to have some grants. Okay, so really important to realize it. So what happened with Iberdrola, and why is it so interesting? It's interesting because you can see that at the macro level, there are many change. Climate change, scarcity. Climate change means drought. Drought means difficulty to have as much hydroelectricity as before. Always more pressure from activism from consumers to say we don't want to have nuclear energy. We want safe energy, and we want it to use renewable resources. So basically, in that sense, there's not so much choice. But if you want to move in this direction, what is fundamental for you is, hey, what can I do to avoid many problems? So at Iberdrola, what they did is that, okay, it's great what they did at national, at European level. Let's try to have it as well at Spain level. They were lucky because Spanish government saw the framework, they moved into it, they created, they adapted, and Iberdrola went first into it. Obviously, they, as a National Commission of Energy, created a framework. They had to prove the positioning of the different companies. Iberdrola said they were the most renewable company in Spain, which is not fully the case, we have to admit it. But they had a really strong positioning in this. And this positioning was not so easy to adopt for the two major competitors of Iberdrola, Endesa and Unión Fenosa, because in their production they have plenty of coal, and therefore they focus on efficiency, on energy efficiency. What is the issue after some years? Well, as you may know, Endesa right now is Italian. It's controlled by Enel. So, and on the other end, Unión Fenosa is now controlled by Gas Natural, and it's called Gas Natural Fenosa, another Spanish company. So what you can see is that the unique positioning that enable utilities to grow at this point was the one that was linked with renewable energies. And here you've got something that I added because it's really important to notice it, that when Sanchez Galan in 2003 assumes the leadership of the company, basically it was possible to recognize people if they were coming from, because Iberdrola is a merge of two companies. It was possible to know which person was coming from one company, which person was coming from another company. So by imposing a strong leadership and by saying, hey, renewable energies need to be added to strategy, it has to be linked to myself, it forced a change in terms of mentality within the company, and the strong leadership of Galan helped Iberdrola to have a cohesion in terms of company. The success of Iberdrola can be pinpointed in terms of social responsible investment, in terms of integration with internal stakeholders first and afterwards with external stakeholders. And in that sense, it's a case that is really rich because it just shows what you should do. It's and to conclude, I would say that when we are talking about Iberdrola, it's one of the few companies in Europe and by extension in the world that saw that before the response report that was published in 2007, the best way in terms of deepening CSR was to go internally first and only afterwards externally. So this is the reason why it's really an interesting case. I'm not saying it was not opportunistic, because it was. Nevertheless, it's a fantastic business case just to see how your company can embed CSR into its strategy. Thank you very much. It was Tanguy Jacopin on K2One. Bye-bye.